want to introduce myself. My name is Corey Rettenmeyer, Recreation Manager for Everett Parks and Facilities. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited to present this project. And just want to emphasize too, this meeting is regarding the Thornton A Sullivan Playground renovation project. We are not going to be discussing the Silver Lake Trail project. That's an entirely separate project, and there will be a link that you can click on that will take you to that project. That project webpage is up to date, and I'll also post that webpage link on our message board. With that said, again, thank you so much for coming. I'd like to introduce Brad Chenoweth. He is the capital projects coordinator for this project, and will be presenting this project tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Welcome, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us and taking time out of your evening to participate in this meeting. And as Corey said, this is the first opportunity for us to really engage the community as a part of the design process for the playground renovation. I do want to make a note that joining us in the wings is Mark Harrison as well. Mark is the manager of design for the Parks Department. I'll be intimately involved with the project over the next year and a half, as will Mark. So tonight, again, is really about getting feedback from everyone. We want to leave as much time as we can for comments and ideas, because that's really what this is all about. There's Mark. And we do have some information we want to share just to kind of give some background on the project, some timing and so forth. So with that said, I'll kind of jump into the presentation. And if anyone has any trouble hearing me, please raise your hand or let us know. Or if you have any difficulty seeing the presentation on your screen, please let us know that as well. So we'll take about 15 minutes to go through the project, and we'll spend most of the evening hearing from you, talking about ideas for the park, and then discussing next steps for the project. While most of us here tonight probably know the park very well and Silver Lake, for those that may be joining us who are not as familiar, here's a little pictograph of Everett with the boundary of the city. This shows you where Silver Lake is located, and this yellow circle is where the playground is located. So we all know that Silver Lake has been a really important part of the park system forever. It's really one of the oldest parks in the system, and it really kind of anchors the south part of our city, which is unique in and of itself. It really started to be assembled in the early teens and 20s of the last century, and it's really been so integral to all of the activities that happen in the south part of the city and just the city in general. It's obviously one of the unique lake settings for a park in the system. It has really been a place where people learn to boat and swim, all kinds of camping activities. So it's been a really important part of our system. Really, the playground itself didn't come into play until, I guess it was 1998 was the last renovation or last installation. So it's time to refresh it and rethink it. So it's been almost 24 years now. And typically we like to take parks and refresh them after about 15 years. So really Silver Lake is overdue for rethinking its purpose within the park. As far as the timing and the project timeline, this kind of gives you a sense of how things will move over the next year and a half. So this, again, is the first phase of design soliciting ideas from the community. So that's what we're doing this evening. This won't be the only opportunity. We will then take your ideas and we'll work with those ideas in developing concepts for the playground redevelopment. And sometime probably in early to mid-March of next year, we'll come back and we'll present those ideas and get some additional feedback from all of you and other people that are interested in the project. And ultimately that will be pared down and brought into a final design, which we'll present to the park board hopefully in April of 2022. And then you'll have a kind of a gap as we're refining the design, getting all the permitting done, and then actually ultimately starting construction in the fall of 2022, with the project ultimately finishing and having a grand opening in the spring of 2023. And the reason we're really kind of pushing it construction to the end of next year is we want to make sure that we don't take away any of the playtime and use of the park next year. So we'll do all the design, and then we'll start the construction next fall. Just to give everyone an overview of the existing conditions. So up here to the north is the parking for the park, and this is the main path. Number one is the main path that brings you from the park into the playground space. Two is roughly where the kiosk is located for information about the playground and the park. Three, we've identified three as this footpath, and those of you that use the park know that this is sort of a desire path where people tend to cut through. So one of the things that we will be thinking about considering, of course, is circulation in the park and around the playground as well, and access. Four, most importantly, is the playground space itself. It's about 14,000 square feet. It's one of our larger playground spaces. And five, some of these ancillary activities that happen around the park, of course, picnic tables and benches where people can sit and watch and enjoy the space in and around the park playground itself. Six is where the restrooms are currently located, and seven, we all know the wonderful beach space too. So this gives you some of the images of the existing playground here. And then also, we think it's really important because this last playground installation was very heavily supported by the communities. So we think that's a really important part of any park development, and especially playgrounds. So that's one of the things we really want to honor and make special note of is the community's input. So the next series of slides that we put together really are intended to kind of feed the creative thinking process and get people thinking about parks and playgrounds and the kinds of things that you really like now, things that you might want to see come into the playground. So it's really a series of sort of inspiration images. And as you might know from some of the more recent renovations that we've done, things like, or places like Forest Park or Legion, some of the other larger playground renovations, you know, they have these really wonderful composite systems with a lot of different types of play elements within them. And that's certainly something that we really think is important, and we do sort of tend toward these composite style playground systems where you got slides and climbing apparatus and flexible climbing apparatuses and shade structures and so forth. So what we thought was kind of interesting about these two is they are somewhat thematic. So that's one of the things that we've been discussing is, you know, obviously Silver Lake is based around the lake and water activities. And some of the things that we've been thinking about as we start to think about design are, you know, are there ways that we can bring in culturally and regionally relevant elements into our design? So this is something that caught our eye as well. It's a climbing apparatus, but it has these sculptures of fish integrated into it. And Corey pointed out the other day that, you know, at Silver Lake especially, there's this history of the fishing derby and all the aquatic activities that happen around the lake. So things like this can be really interesting and interactive, and it's very dynamic in terms of the colors and just the play structure itself. Also, perhaps there are ways that we can create more anchor elements that really serve as an attraction to the park, and then build around that these other activities like swings and slides and other elements that are really important that people still enjoy today. There's really incredible apparatus too that, you know, they really encourage dynamic play. So people, you know, kids can climb in them and through them, around them, creates this whole social environment they can really interact within. So things like this are really great to be thinking about also. And even you can see how there's different surfaces that are integrated into these various playscapes too. Are there ways that we can start to encourage kids to, come together and do team types of play activities? And again, you're looking here at these really interactive sculptural play elements. This is a salmon, for instance, playing off the Seattle and just the Pacific Northwest. These are slides that we thought were pretty dynamic as well. This is down the Seattle Center. This one reflects kind of an octopus. So again, it's these sculptural elements and the colors and the materials we think would be interesting to think about as we begin to dive into the process of design. And then there's also looking at natural materials. So do we want to bring in elements that are more reflective of nature, so that, I think all of us as kids, we probably played in the woods and we played in playscapes, but you think about later in life going out into the woods and nature and camping and hiking, and you suddenly as a kid been playing on these boulders and you're like, oh, I'm out in nature now, actually integrating with what's happening out in the woods and the forests. We're going to be thinking about surfacing as well. There's a lot of different surface materials out there. You probably have seen some of the rubberized tile systems on some of our playgrounds. This is a synthetic turf material that we've been using on a couple of playgrounds recently that people really enjoy, just in terms of comfort and playing on it. When kids fall on it, it's a lot softer than it is maybe on a rubberized material, or even the wood fiber that you see in some of the playgrounds as well. But what's kind of cool about this is too, they've changed the topography, so it's not just a flat surface. It could be something where kids can go up and down these spaces and even through them. So there's a lot of really interesting ways to begin to use the materials and the surface materials, especially within the play spaces. So these are just kind of some of the things that we wanted to bring to you as we start to think about redeveloping Silver Lake. And really, this is an overlay of the park itself. So this rectangular space is the playground again. So we're really going to be focusing on the play space itself. We intend to keep the existing border, the concrete curb. So that will pretty much continue to be defined as the border, but really anything within that is what we want to build and create. Again, we talked about the paths and the circulation around the space. There's obviously screening to be thinking about. In fact, prior to this meeting, somebody emailed Corey and wanted to make sure we gave consideration to the sun and how it affects play space and play equipment, because more exposure to the sun, it becomes hot and sometimes really not very usable. So making sure that we're thinking about sun angles and where we place equipment within the play space. And then the relationship of the play space to the beach, I think, is really important. And then, as Corey alluded to too, there are other projects that are happening around the lake, which are really great. And you can see here we've shown the proposed new trail, or a part of the proposed new trail, and how that comes through and near to the play space as well. So we're just thinking about all of the elements that are in and around the playground. So that kind of gives you a quick overview of where we're headed. And again, it's going to be over the next year and a half. But what we really would love to do is get your input and thoughts and feedback, and we'll take all that, we'll assemble it and digest it and integrate it into our design over the next few months. So anybody that wants to, if you want to unmute and make some comments or give us any feedback or thoughts.
Let's start with Mary, and then Anne, I think, had a raised hand.
So my name's Mary, and I've lived here for 38 years, and literally just up the street. I have a 30-year-old in a wheelchair, and I was thrilled when the first renovation was happening in the 90s because I thought, great, I could have something for my son to play at. Unfortunately, there was a ramp, yes, thank you, but it only went up to just a little steering wheel and did not give him anything to play on. Could not get his wheelchair into the merry-go-round. And while I know that they have adapted and used a special needs high back chair for a swing, those are great. I do now have a granddaughter that we take down there, excuse me, quite often, and she loves to play on the playground. But unfortunately, my son can't get into the playground because he certainly can't. Bark does not do well for wheelchairs. We have visited the new playground up at Forest Park. Love that. Love the turf. I participated, we were up there playing and noticed when Camp Prob was up there, a specialized camp for kids with special needs that my kids participated in. There were two kids in wheelchairs. One was zipping around, loving everything and being able to do some hands-on activities. Couldn't do the slides, understandably, but there was things that were lower for him to be able to reach at. My son's gone up there now, and we've done, the musical play that he can do. He can go on a merry-go-round and have his niece push him around in the merry-go-round, and it's not a fight to get him in and out. So my biggest thing is accessibility. It's huge. You're talking about the number 3 where the footpath comes down. I can't get his wheelchair through the curb to come down that. I mean, I can maneuver down the down the path, but I can't get his wheelchair through the curb. So I either have to go down on the roadside or all the way down past the restroom. So it makes it difficult for us to access the park easily. I don't know if in looking at the play lawn area, if there's any consideration for a little stage area, because I know that, previous to COVID, we'd gone down to music in the park, and there's really no place for the musicians or whatnot to have a stage area for them to participate. And I think it might be something more family oriented for everyone to participate in. The only other hope would be it's pretty difficult to get him onto the dock with the wheelchair, because then now we go over sand. So I know I'm not the only one that has a wheelchair, and I know that that's not the only intended use for the park, but I would really like accessibility to be a part of all areas of the park. And I think I'll probably look into the Silver Lake Trail plan as well, because again, we live here, and I would utilize it much more if it was more convenient for us to access it.
Mary, thank you very much for your comments and great ideas. These are all incredibly important to us, especially accessibility. And the more that we look at the types of systems that we've been using and integrating into the playgrounds, that's really been number one and top priority for us. So thank you. That's definitely up on the list, and the thoughts about the stage and access to the dock as well is great.
May I comment?
Of course.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the rules have changed considerably since the last playground was put in and the vicinity was designed. ADA and the Department of Justice require that for all new improvements. So I think you'll find it to be much more receptive to people with special needs. And I would like to ask you to maybe give us a call afterwards. Maybe we could think a little bit more about people of considerable disability, because I have a sister who's profoundly handicapped, and I'd like to take a look at what you think of different kinds of equipment, et cetera, if you're available or if you're open to that.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
If there's not any more comments with Mary's recent comments, let's move on to Anne, and then follow that with Jennifer.
Okay, hi there. I'm Anne. I'm a mom here in Everett. I moved here a little over 3 years ago, and I have to say one of my favorite things about this city is the Parks Department and how many playgrounds there are and how many places there are to enjoy with a young family. It's just such a pleasure, and when people come to visit, they are also just blown away when I kind of roll through what we have here in this town. So I wanted to jump on. My main concern before even hearing what your presentation or your thoughts were is just that with a lot of these new renovations, American Legion Park, Forest Park, we go to Lion Park a lot, we use Lowell Riverfront Park. A lot of that equipment starts to feel a little bit repetitive. It seems like you guys are utilizing a lot of that same company. And even for my son, it just starts to kind of feel like the same thing visually. And we are a family who will travel for playgrounds. So I follow a lot of different mom Instagram accounts, and they'll post a cool playground that has, something like a sculptural anchor piece, like you guys touched on. And we'll drive an hour to go to a cool new playground just to check out something and to have a little bit of a different day. We went recently to Totem Park, I think it's down in Kirkland, because they have an elevator feature on their playground, and we really wanted to try that out. One of our favorite park renovations is Exploration Park in Mill Creek. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but it's kind of tied in and feels like a natural play space while also offering just kind of a little bit of a different challenges to kids. So just using huge logs to balance on and to allow children to take risks while playing, but while still being in kind of a controlled environment. That's really a favorite park of ours. So I really came here just to encourage your team to think outside the box a little bit with design. And seeing your presentation, it certainly seems like you're doing that. Another cool idea with those anchor pieces would maybe be to hire local or native indigenous artists to contribute to that anchor piece. The thing that comes to mind is up in La Conner, they have that salmon slide and the salmon bridge. You could do something really cool like that would make Thornton Sullivan kind of a destination park for even people outside the area, because I know other families and parents will travel to go to something that's interesting and cool. The only other thing I wanted to touch on, I really wanted to talk about the stage and the accessibility that was just brought up with the previous commenter. So that's great. I had that on my list to talk about too. So I won't go into that at all. I'm just kind of adding another thumbs up to those two thoughts. But the only other thing I really wanted to touch on is to take into account the visibility around the play space. Because this park is next to a lake, it would be really important to think about from each part of the park if you can see where your kid's going, because there's nothing more stressful as a parent to see your kid playing peacefully and then they go over a hill or to the other side of the playground and suddenly they're by the lake, you can't see them. So I think considering that in your design would be really important and appreciated from the community. But that's all I came to say. So thank you so much. Really excited to see what you guys come up with for this park.
Thank you, Anne. We really appreciate your comments. And as designers, yes, creativity is so important. And I understand what you're saying about the play systems going in, but we really are thinking about making these playgrounds as unique as possible and being reflective of the uniqueness of the Pacific Northwest as well.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Jennifer.
Hi there. I'm just going to go ahead and build on the ideas that were just offered. So my son has a disability, so accessibility is paramount. It has to be there. And I believe Camp Patterson is, stationed there at that park. So, when those COVID restrictions lift, there's a huge number of young people and youth with disabilities who attempt to utilize that park every year. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I think Anne talked about our connection to our Indigenous people. So, you know, the city of Everett just adopted a land acknowledgement in partnership with the Tulalip this summer. So I would love to see some kind of partnership. The Tulalip has a beautiful early learning center on their reservation. And I think that would just not only be, you know, just beautiful for this park, the influence of that, but so educational for anybody who accesses this space. So those were the two priorities that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Really great comments from everybody here. Really appreciate it. That makes us happy when we can get these type of comments. It's exactly what we're looking for. Anything else, Brad, that you have for the group here?
No, I will just say that, again, thank you for joining us and thank you for all your really valuable comments. And please don't let this be, you know, the last opportunity, or, you know, feel like this is the last opportunity for you to share ideas. So if after this evening you have additional thoughts or you want to give us more feedback, we do want you to stay connected with us. So here is my email. You have Mark's email as well, and Corey's. You're welcome to email any and all of us. We'll get back to you and we can talk further. There are website links here to the Everett Parks website, our projects page. So that's where Corey will have the information presented this evening. We'll post updates as we can to that as well. You'll be seeing news releases periodically about projects. If you would like to learn more about what's happening with the Silver Lake Trail project, you can also go to this link to learn more and get updates. And like I mentioned earlier, we will plan to be back with the community probably mid-March. And at that meeting, our goal would be to present 1 to 2 concepts for comment and feedback. And then again, we'll take that and we'll digest that and bring it into a final design, which we'll present to the Parks Board in early April. So that's what we have for you this evening. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your input and involvement and interest.
Absolutely.
Mark, did you have anything else?
You guys. Oh, sorry. I wanted to jump in. This is Anne again. I was looking again at my little note page. Just one more design feature that I think would be so appreciated, whether it's on the trail or just outside the playground, is there's really no place to rinse off in that park after playing on the beach and in the sand. And, you know, occasionally there's swimmers itch warnings and things like that in that park, which doesn't deter us, but it'd sure be nice if there's a place. I don't know if you're planning on a water feature there, or, you know, maybe a little squirt pad or splash pad or something would be really nice.
I can tell you that there are talks of potentially having outdoor shower units in the park there, but we're still developing that. But that's definitely being considered.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have anything further.
All right. Well, with that said, thank you again. Have a nice evening and stay in touch.